Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to go my review of Wrestle War 1989. Starting off the evening, we go to our first match of the night. It is Doug Gilbert versus the Great Muta. I thought it was an okay opening matchup for Wrestle War 1989. Back and forth matchup between both Doug Gilbert and Great Muta, with Muta keeping the pace of the match. Muta hits an elbow drop on Doug Gilbert in the middle of the ring. Eddie Gilbert makes his way down to the ring, but Muta ultimately hits his signature moonsault off the top rope on Doug Gilbert, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is the Great Muta. Hats off to the Great Muta for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Ranger Ross versus Butch Reed. Again, I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Ranger Ross and Butch Reed, with Ranger Ross keeping the pace of the match. Butch Reed ends up hitting a devastating neck breaker on Ranger Ross in the middle of the ring. Reed then hits a multiple elbow drops on Ranger Ross, and Reed ultimately hits a shoulder block tackle off the top rope on Ranger Ross, pinning him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Butch Reed. Hats off to Butch Reed for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a bull rope match. It is Dick Murdoch versus Bob Orton. I thought it was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Murdoch and Orton, with Murdoch keeping the pace of the match. Murdoch ties Orton's legs with the bull rope. Murdoch then lands multiple elbow drops on Bob Orton, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Dick Murdoch. Hats off to Murdoch for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Dynamic Dudes versus the Samoan SWAT team. I thought it was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with the Samoan SWAT team keeping the pace of the match. Fatu ends up hitting a power slam on Johnny in the middle of the ring. Fatu then hits a splash on Shane for a near fall. Johnny then gets up, hits a dropkick off the top rope on Fatu. Shane then goes for the cover, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are the Dynamic Dudes. Hats off to the Dynamic Dudes for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. It is Lex Luger versus Michael P.S. Hayes. I thought it was a good matchup. Back and forth matchup between both Lex Luger and Michael P.S. Hayes, with Luger keeping the pace of the match. Hayes then hits an elbow drop on Lex Luger, but Lex gets up, hits 3 press slams on Michael P.S. Hayes. Hayes then gets up, hits his signature DDT on Lex Luger. Terry Gordy is here. Terry Gordy ends up pushing Michael P.S. Hayes to cover Lex Luger. Pins him for the 3. Referee didn't see the Terry Gordy ringside. Michael P.S. Hayes ends up pinning Lex Luger for the 3. And your winner of the match, and at that time, new NWA United States Heavyweight Champion, is Michael P.S. Hayes. Hats off to Michael P.S. Hayes for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is for the NWA Television Championship. It is Sting versus the Iron Sheik. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both the Sheik, Iron Sheik, and Sting. Sting was keeping the pace of the match. Iron Sheik then hits a gut-wrench suplex on Sting. Sting then hits a Stinger Splash on Iron Sheik in the corner. And then Sting ultimately applies the Scorpion Deathlock on the Iron Sheik. And your winner of the match, and still NWA Television Champion, is Sting. Hats off to Sting for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. It is Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. One of the biggest stipulations about this match was that they had 3 judges for this match, which were all former NWA World Champions in their own right. They had Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, and Terry Funk to be the 3 judges for this Heavyweight Championship matchup. The match itself was a great match. Back and forth matchup between both Flair and Steamboat. Flair and Ricky both exchange chops in the middle of the ring. Ricky then hits a drop kick, sends Flair to the outside. Flair then lands devastating chops on Ricky. Flair then applies a figure 4 leg lock, but Ricky breaks the hold. Flair then is working on the injured leg of Ricky. Ricky then gets up, hits a step-up enziguri on Flair, and then Flair ultimately hits a roll-up on Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match, and at that time, new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, is Ric Flair. A couple of things I want to say about this matchup, man. Number one, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, in my honest opinion, is probably one of the best rivalries that, Ric Flair ever had in his career. I mean, from bell to bell, Ricky Steamboat can easily go a 60-minute match, no problem. And, the Chi-Town Rumble match they had was absolutely phenomenal, as well as the match they had here for Wrestle War 1989. Man, it was absolutely fantastic matchup. And to be honest with you, having the 3 judges ringside was kind of important as well because, Lou Thez is one of the greatest champions of all time. You have Pat O'Connor and Terry Funk. And Terry Funk played a big part of this matchup because at the end of the matchup, Terry Funk was on the microphone. He was talking about Ric Flair. And then Ric Flair and Terry Funk had a little bit of a scuffle. And then Terry Funk ends up hitting a pile driver on Ric Flair on the outside through a table, which is going to set up a match between Terry Funk and Ric Flair at the Great American Bash. So it was an awesome match. It really was, and told a hell of a story. And to be honest with you, I don't think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat gets a lot of, notoriety, in my honest opinion. I feel like a lot of people think he's overrated, but I think he's severely underrated. I think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I mean, one of the best Intercontinental Champions we've ever seen, and to be honest with you, probably one of the best World Heavyweight Champions we've ever seen in professional wrestling. I mean, I think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is severely underrated. So, and the matches that he had with Flair just goes to show you how underrated he really was because, like I said, bell to bell, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat can easily, on any given night, beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. But unfortunately, Ricky did not retain the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in this matchup, and Ric Flair becomes, at that time, the new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. So hats off to Ric Flair for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a tag team matchup for the NWA Tag Team Championships. It is the Road Warriors versus the Varsity Club. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both the Road Warriors and Varsity Club, with the Road Warriors keeping the pace of the match. Animal then hits a devastating power slam on Mike Rotunda. Road Warriors then hit the finish, but the Varsity Club ended up coming down to the ring, attacking the rest of the Varsity Club, I should say, come down to the ring and attack referee, which was actually Nikita Koloff. And the Road Warriors end up winning this match by disqualification. So hats off to the Road Warriors for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner versus Kevin Sullivan and Dan Spivey for the NWA United States Tag Team Championships. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams with Kevin Sullivan and Dan Spivey keeping the pace of the match. Rick Steiner ends up hitting a devastating clothesline on Kevin Sullivan. Eddie Gilbert ends up hitting the roll-up from that clothesline, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match, and at that time still NWA United States Tag Team Champions, are Eddie Gilbert and Rick Steiner. A couple of things I'm going to say about Wrestle War 1989 before I get out of here, man. Number one, it was a great event. I thought it was a really good event. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the greatest event of all time. But some of the matches I actually enjoyed, man. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Great Muta. It was great to see him in this pay-per-view, going up against Doug Gilbert, which obviously I don't know a lot about Doug Gilbert. The way they were talking was he's the brother of Eddie Gilbert. Not 100% sure on that. But big fan of the Great Muta. I thought he had a fantastic career in WCW. And the way they were building the Great Muta and the amount of great matches he had with Sting, just absolutely phenomenal. The bull rope match between Murdoch and Orton, it was an okay matchup. I feel like in a small way it was kind of lackluster as well. Lex Luger versus Michael P.S. Hayes for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship was absolutely phenomenal, man. Lex Luger, like I've told everybody, to the mid to late 80s, Lex Luger was the guy. I mean, Lex Luger was, the total package. I mean, I think WCW, NWA at the time really put a lot of momentum behind Lex Luger. He was supposed to be the next Hogan, in my honest opinion, for NWA, WCW. I really do. I feel like I said, in the mid-80s to late 80s, Lex Luger was the Hulk Hogan for WCW. And they were really hyping up Lex Luger. And he had phenomenal matchups. I mean, a lot of people don't like Lex Luger, but Lex Luger can wrestle. And back in the day, I mean, Lex Luger was that guy. I mean, he had a lot of good matches with Ric Flair. Obviously, this match here with Michael P.S. Hayes was a really good matchup. And to be honest with you, it wasn't like they didn't believe in Lex Luger because they gave him, a World Championship run. They gave him an NWA United States Heavyweight Championship run. So obviously, NWA, WCW had a lot of faith in Lex Luger in the mid to late 80s. So, and honestly, he was probably one of the best superstars they had in the mid 80s to late, mid to late 80s. So, I mean, it was a hell of a match. Iron Sheik and Sting, that was one match that, yeah, I'm a big fan of Sting as well, but Iron Sheik and Sting, I didn't understand why this match was booked. And to be honest with you, it was kind of lackadaisical. I feel like Sting was kind of carrying the match. And obviously, Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, what more can you get out of two guys that are absolute legends? You know, almost pretty much giving you a 60-minute match. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I mean, Ric Flair and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat have put on phenomenal matches for the fans. And I mean, like I stated earlier, and it might be a hot take for most people, but I think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is severely underrated. You know, his heavyweight championship runs were great. Just a phenomenal athlete, man. I mean, he's been in WCW for so long. I mean, even the match he had at WrestleMania, I think it was WrestleMania 3, between Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, it was a fantastic matchup. It should have main evented WrestleMania 3, in my honest opinion. And it actually went down as one of the greatest matches of all time. But I feel like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, throughout his career, was severely underrated, in my honest opinion. I mean, Ric Flair, 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. What more can you say about the guy? He's an absolute legend. Absolute legend. And every time Flair and Steamboat got in the ring, you were always going to get one hell of a match. And that's exactly what we got for Wrestle War 1989. So, again, this was a really decent event. It was a solid event. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the greatest. I mean, if I had to get Wrestle War 1989 a rating from 1 out of 10, I'm going to give it a solid 6.5 at best for Wrestle War 1989, man. But this is my review of Wrestle War 1989. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.